Many thanks for the introduction, and thanks for all the previous speakers for their very nice talks. And so before I gave my talk, please allow me to thank my coworkers, Sherry Mao, William Wu, Song Fu, and Daniel Olivia, and Bruno Camo. So the title here is Flow Decomposition and Model Reduction, inspired by computer vision. It's actually two parts. One is flow decomposition and the other is model reduction. So here's the outline. I will give a very brief introduction and followed by these two small topics. So as I already mentioned by Professor Popov, I gave a very brief self-introduction here. So regarding the research background, we have been interested in problems involved in this turbo machinery on this figure. For example, we have the curvature effects of the blade. So we studied the Guttli instability in incompressible flows, which is caused by these curvature effects. Also non-ideal fluids, which could be the operating fluid for such kind of turbo machinery. And in this HPC wind energy project, we are interested in the modal reduction and flow decomposition of non-stationary flow here. So this is the research background of today's talk. So the two topics are actually already published in two separate papers listed here. And the first one is flow decomposition using EWT. So here, EWT is short for empirical wavelet transform. So first, we need to ask a very simple question: why we need to decompose the flow? The answer is also simple because flows are usually very complex. And to decompose a flow, we can make use of plenty of downstream applications. For example, the model analysis, data compression, reduced order modeling. These applications all depend on the flow decomposition and model reduction. So let's take a brief overview of the state of arts in model analysis. So if you look at this figure, basically you can see two major branches. The blue one, the DMD, dynamic mode decomposition, and the green ones, the POD, proper orthogonal decompositions. They are both widely applied in fluid mechanics, and they have lots of their own variants for these sub-methods. And if we look into these methods, we see some drawbacks related to these methods. For example, I listed three here. The first, these methods cannot be used on non-stationary flows or traveling wave problems. I will show it later. And they cannot be used on flow visualizations. You always need flow data, even 3D data with time series. So that is the third drawback. They cannot be used with instantaneous flow data. You need time series, not a single time steps. That's not okay for these methods. So to overcome these drawbacks, we tried to bring some ideas from the sector of computer vision. So we make use of this method called empirical wavelet transform. This method was proposed in the year 2013 in this paper, and it was used to process images. For example, we have an image here, and in the Fourier space, we cut the image, and we rebuild the image from individual sections of this Fourier spectrum. As a result, you can see several parts of the image. Here you see larger scales, and here you see some smaller scales. That's a result of this empirical wavelet transform that gave rise to this, we call that EWT mode, this full mode of this picture. So to bring this idea to fluid mechanics, we follow this method in this way. So we have an input data, From this data, we find its Fourier supports. And in Fourier space, we cut the data. That is, we build a filter bank. We use this filter bank to cut the data like this. So here, the white, here you see a white curve. That is the signal in its Fourier space. And we cut this signal with different colors, as you can see here. From these sections in Fourier space, we rebuild the signal into physical space, only using part of the Fourier spectrum. That is how we get this EWT mode. So I will show you with an example from this boundary layer transition. What you see here is a flow visualization of a flat plate here. So we have free stream. The direction is from left to right. Here we have the leading edge. And close to the leading edge, we add some free stream turbulence to trigger a bypass transition. As a result, what you can see here downstream is boundary layer streaks visualized by the streamwise velocity. And also this further downstream, you can see the hairpin vertices here. So this one and this 2D image are the same. So this 2D image is the visualization from this 3D data. So what we will do with this data is we just use this 2D image first to try to decompose the flow and to find useful information. And later, we will use the 3D data also to decompose it, to validate, to compare with each other. So here I show a video. That is the EWT modes we applied to this flow visualization. So what you see here on the first row, it's the source image. That is the input. And following that, we have 9 EWT modes. And on the left, on the right, they are the same. It's just two different views. One is counter view on the left, and on the right, we have the image view. And it's already clear, or more or less, you can see the different scales here. For example, in this mode, you see the boundary layer streaks. And in these higher modes, you see perturbations. And what we do is we try to validate this decomposition with stability analysis. So here, on the left, we have the EWT modes, the source image, and the 9 modes here. And on the right, we perform the stability analysis for this flow, for this streaky flow. And from the stability analysis, we see that there are several instability modes. We call that the mode 1, mode 2, and mode 3. In fact, from this growth rate, we can see the mode 1 starts to grow at x equals to 44, and mode 2 starts to grow at 50. And mode 1 is here on this left streak, and mode 2 is on the right streak, basically. So to compare, if we look at the EWT modes, we can recognize mode 1 and mode 2 from EWT modes here, mode 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. From these 3 modes, we recognize that mode 1 becomes unstable at x equals to 44, and mode 2 and 3 from 50. So that actually matches very well with each other from the point of view of stability analysis. That is to say, even just from a flow image, from flow visualizations, we can extract some useful information from these EWT modes. So to move further, if we feed the method with 3D flow data, we also can get EWT modes from this 3D data. For example, here we showed 6 modes. And from these lower modes, we can see the boundary layer streaks. And for higher modes, we see the perturbations. And for even higher modes, we can see smaller scales. And these smaller scales matches very well with the bypass features of the boundary layer transition. So what bypass feature refers to is here. We have smaller scales near the inlet here, also here. But these smaller scales will disappear in the middle. that is swollen by the boundary layer. And further downstream, when the flow is close to turbulent, you have smaller scales again. So these features are revealed by the EWT modes, which can hardly be seen from the visualization itself. So this is also useful. So to make a comparison with the state of arts, POD and DMD, we see what our method is good at is here. POD is actually gives you modes, which is according to its energy. So mode 1 has the highest energy, and higher modes has a lower energy. And for some problems in particular, you can even use 2 or 3 modes. That is enough to reproduce the whole flow. But for DMD, it is given by frequency. So lower modes has lower frequency, higher mode has higher frequency. And for EWT, what we proposed here, it's the modes are generated according to scale. It's spatial scales, neither energy nor frequency. So for lower modes, you have larger scale. We reproduce the boundary layer streaks. And for higher modes, we have smaller scales. And you can see the scales are not mixed with each other as opposed to POD and DMD. For example, in POD, you can see both streaks and some perturbations on top of it. So the scales are still mixed for in POD and also in DMD. That is the major difference between our method and the state of art. So I move very quickly to the second topic. That is modal reduction of traveling wave problems. So again, if we go back to the overview, this method has a major drawbacks is that they are not feasible for non-stationary flows or traveling wave problem. The reason is that because traveling wave problems has a very large cosmograph N wave. What does this cosmograph N wave mean? I will show you here. So for example, I show you an example. This is a traveling wave problem. So you can see in this video, on the top left, we have the raw data. That is traveling Gaussian soliton, as you can see. It's traveling randomly in space. And what we do is we try to reduce its model using POD. So here you can see the reduced order model. I write Rome here. You can see 4 modes and 8 modes. If you compare these two figures with the raw data, you can see a very big difference. Even the position is not correctly predicted. And if you look at the amplitude, it's even more of the value, of the correct value. And what we proposed in this work is we proposed a method called RCDT. I will introduce it in the next slide. With this method, again, we use only 4 modes to build the reduced order model. You can see there is hardly any difference between the reduced order model here in this figure with the raw data. So talking about this method, it's called RCDT. So the full name is REN Cumulative Distribution Transform. So it's actually 2 parts added together. One is REN transform, and the second is cumulative distribution transform. They are 2 transforms. These 2 transforms are built together, and this method is used to for image classification, and it was proposed in the year 2015. And why they propose this method is to fight with this machine learning, because in machine learning you always need to train the data, and you can hardly actually reduce the data size of your model. But using this RCDT, we have a chance to reduce the model, to really reduce the model. And as you can see in this RCDT space, the different classes of the images are well separated from each other compared to the physical space from here. So that is why this method was proposed in image processing. So we take the idea of this method to apply it to traveling wave problems. So again, I show a brief video here. So on the left, you can see a traveling wave, very simple traveling wave in 1D. And on the right, it's a traveling wave in CDT space. CDT is short for cumulative differential transform. So in traveling in the physical space, the traveling wave has a very large common graph n wave. But in the CDT space, we can see it's not a traveling wave anymore, but it becomes amplitude modulations. As a result, the common graph n wave becomes very small. So if I show our method in a diagram, it's like this. We have the input signal, we normalize it, and we take it to the RCDT space by performing the REN transform and CDT transform. And in this space, we apply some modal reduction techniques, for example, POD or something more advanced. And after the modal reduction, we go back to the physical space because these transforms are both invertible. So we apply ICDT and iREN and denormalize, we get to this physical space. Well, in conventional methods, you don't have this transform. You just build the model, reduce order model in physical space. So that is the difference between our method and conventional method. So to show an example here, so here is a video. It's the same example as I showed in the introduction. Here on the first image is a signal, the randomly traveling Gaussian soliton, and we apply REN transform. As you can see, it becomes a signal like this. And also further, we apply the CDT. It becomes this amplitude modulations. And on this signal, we build the reduced order model with only 4 modes. Here, as you can see, there is hardly a difference between the reduced order model and the raw data in RCDT space. So as a result, if we go back to the physical space, everything becomes the same as the raw data in physical space. So as a result of this workflow, we are able to reduce the model order of these traveling wave problems. Okay, so if we make some further comparison between the physical space and RCDT space in terms of energy distribution on the left and error on the right, you can see some actually very big difference here. So this square, gray square symbol shows the physical space, and this yellow circle stands for the RCDT space. So in this log scale, we already see a very sharp drop of these singular values for POD. That means you only need to keep 1, 2, 3, only a few modes, that's enough to reproduce your physical problem. But in physical space, you still need lots of modes. That is why traveling wave problems can hardly be model reduced in physical space. And that is the large uncommon graph means. And also, if we compare the error as a function of number of modes in reduced order modeling, we can see if you keep 3 modes, that's enough in RCDT space. The error are minimal. Well, in physical space, the error drops like linearly by increasing the number of modes, but it's far from satisfactory. So here is a error comparison. And now I'm reaching my last slides. It's a summary of today's talk. So the background is actually from this the age of big data, what challenge we face is how to extract pertinent knowledge from projected flow data, such as from visualizations I showed before. And also for non-stationary flows or traveling wave problems, they are critical challenges for model reduction techniques. So to motivated by these two problems, we developed two methods. One is EWT decomposition of instantaneous flows. So using this method, we are able to decompose an instantaneous flow into EWT modes, which is not possible with POD or DMD method. And EWT is decompose the flow by its scales as compared to these two methods. And the second is we propose the model reduction of traveling wave problems with RCDT method. This method can work for traveling waves up to 3-dimensional problems, and it is more precise, and you have a smaller reduced order model. And thank you very much. So this is not a long talk. And also lastly, I would like to acknowledge the HPC Wind Energy Project, which makes this work possible. Thank you.